Welcome to Greystoke Studio. This is where Omnivibe works out of. We've been working on Omnivibe since 2015. We have a great range of producers working at Greystoke Studio, including myself. We've got Ed Stokes, Roberto Panofsky, Brinsley Chidavensi, David Whitmore, Joe Rodwell and Gregor McWilliam. They all work at Greystoke Studio and knock out great productions, and they've also been working on the Omnivibe project. Today I'm shooting a video to explain some of the pointers that I feel may be helpful for anyone who's an aspiring record producer who's trying to get on in the business. I started as a keyboard player and I went on to be a record producer, and it's worked out very well for me. There's some things that I learned right at the beginning and things that I'm still learning today. So I'm going to give you a summary of some ideas that I have that's going to help you be a great producer. Consistency. When I started out as a keyboard player, I decided that what I needed to do was be at my absolute peak every time I turned up at a session. Initially I was doing middle of the road gigs, working with bands. The standard of the playing was quite low. Playing for 5 hours, you pace yourself. And then when I went into the studio, I found that the standard was really high. You had to be perfect every single time. It was quite a difficult transition going from doing a middle of the road gig and then going into a studio where you're completely under the microscope and everything's being watched. So what I decided to do was take a risk. I gave up the gigs, effectively became unemployed, and I was just available for doing sessions and nothing else. I was well advertised, but I was just sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. Every time I got offered a session, I would turn up to the session, I'd have my roadie ready, perform at the session as if the session had been booked in my diary for weeks. A good example of this was when I worked with Soul to Soul. I got a phone call and they said, "Oh, hi, is that Andy?" And I said, "Yes, Andy." They asked if I could do a session, and I said yes, and I said, "When?" They said, "We need you down. We've been let down by our keyboard player." So I turned up. They were very grateful to see me. The session wasn't a formality, but it ended up really good. That gave me a big credit. I'm actually on the Get a Life album, and that credit has opened doors for future work and put me in great stead. Taking risks. I've been a great believer in taking risks. I was already a successful keyboard player and I was doing some great sessions, but I realised that if I could have a home setup that people could come to, I would really clean up, because in those days programming suites hadn't even been invented, and most people, they were doing all their programming in the studio, which was great for the studios, but for me, I felt that if I could provide a premises where people could program and get the ideas, the tracks together, more money would come to the Andy Whitmore camp, which is great for my business. As it was, I was getting a lot of producers phoning me up and asking to come around my house and program. I was getting complaints from the neighbours, which really wasn't advisable. So I decided to take a risk, buy a house which had a big double garage. I really couldn't afford it. I went to my accountant and asked, "Do you think it's a good idea for me to buy this house?" And he said, "You are absolutely mad. Don't do it." I decided to do it. When I moved into the house on the Friday, I had a session booked for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It was great money and I was really looking forward to it, and I felt very confident that I had good money coming in and I'd be able to pay the next month's mortgage. It was a first session. There was a lot of teething problems on the first day. Obviously I'm a world-class keyboard player, not really a guitarist. This act, they really wanted it. They hated keyboards. They wanted it all to be guitar, and not just any old guitar, because I can play guitar as well, but not top standard. And they blew me out after 2 hours. It was a disaster, and I was like, oh dear, what am I going to do now? And literally the next day a new job came in, and the jobs came in. It was a great idea to build this programming suite. There was a demand for it, and even though the first session fell through, it ended up being a great idea. That's one example of risks I've taken, but I would recommend take a few risks. That's a good way to step up your career. When I say consistency, work at your absolute best. So if I'm working at 110%, then I'm coming across as a keyboard player that's that good as an average. If I'm comparing myself with other keyboard players that just turn up, oh, it's another day, and they're doing the session, then even if they're better than me, I'm still going to come across really well. And I made that decision right at the beginning of my career that I was just going to always be absolutely at my peak when I turn up at a session. And to be honest, that is a mantra that I've taken through all the way. And even now, when I turn up to a session, when I am working, I make sure that I give 110% effort. And I've just said, rather than pacing myself and just getting very busy, I'd rather be less busy, but every time I work, I get paid very well. I work really hard and everybody's happy. The other thing is if you're working at 110%, you are giving great value for money. Clients and artists really appreciate that. If you're delivering great product, you get rebooked. Repeat work is great because you know the scene. There's no learning curve at the beginning of the session because you've already got a rapport going. It's very important to be confident when you're doing a production or whether you're doing a session. It's important that the artist and the client have confidence in you so that they'll be happy to work with you. This inspires the client or the artist to believe in you and know that everything's going to go really well. I went for an interview with Terence Trent D'Arby. I set up all my gear and I started playing the parts, and Terence just shouted over organ, and I was like, sorry? Organ, play organ. So I said, oh, okay. So I got an organ pre-set up, started playing organ, finished that song, then we started up another song. I'd never heard these songs, I was just jamming along. Then we came up to the next song, and he goes, piano. I said, okay. So I was detecting a bit of an attitude from Terence, but I thought, just be very confident. So I carried on playing. I played piano, and then we did strings, and then we did some brass and different things. I had a serious setup, and I had a big section of sounds. After we'd done 5 songs, let's bear in mind that he was being quite rude to me, the way he was talking to me. When it came to the 6th song, I started packing down my keyboards, and he came over. He said, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm packing up my keyboards, I'm going home. And he said, well, I haven't finished the audition yet. So I said, well, you've seen what I can do. If you like it, you know my number, and if you don't, that's fair enough. I'm going. Catch you later. And needless to say, I got the job. So, yes, that's one example of confidence. Malcolm McLaren is a very, very hard taskmaster, very, very successful producer, but very hard taskmaster. And I've seen many musicians crumble in front of him. I'm even aware of a keyboard player that had to get taken off to the hospital. He cracked up on the session. In the beginning, when I was working with Malcolm, he didn't know me at all. Malcolm asked me to lay down a keyboard part on this track. So I laid down a part, he didn't like it. Then he asked for another sound. He didn't give me any guidance, he just said, put another sound down. So I put another sound down, he didn't like that at all. I must have put down 10 ideas. And the thing is as a top session keyboard player, you know that certain sounds everybody likes. There's certain parts that everyone likes, and and I was working on like 5 or 6 genres of music. What I was doing is when he asked for an idea, I was thinking, well, he didn't like that, doesn't like that. I know, I'll use that idea. That worked really well on another track. So I was doing this, and I was using what I thought were great ideas and great parts, and he didn't like any of them. I knew I had a really good idea that always worked, but I thought, I'm going to have to sell this idea to him. I asked him for some input, came up with this idea which was totally inspired by his input. It's not true, but I'm just telling you the way I was working. So I sold it to him that it's actually his idea, and then I know exactly what you're looking for. This is the idea. And then I played, it was just another keyboard part, but because I kind of sold it to him, made a big deal, it's convinced him that a lot of it was his idea. He loved it. And then once he'd accepted one idea, he was great. Don't digress. Another thing about the music industry is whilst you're going on, say you want to be a singer, you'll get lots of other opportunities come your way, and if you spread yourself too thin, you can end up doing a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. So what I'm saying to you is if you're a singer, just stick with the singer, just keep practicing, selling yourself as a singer, and if people say, oh look, you look very beautiful, we'd like you to do some modelling as well, just say no, just stay with the singing, and eventually something good will come out of it. As a keyboard player, I've always specialised in keyboards. I've not digressed to doing a bit of cello, a bit of guitar. I can play these instruments, but I don't sell myself as a guitarist anywhere. And the only way you're ever going to make any money in this industry is if you do one thing really well. So I stuck to keyboards, and eventually it took off. The other thing is because I can't do anything else, because I didn't do a backup job, when times have got really tough and I've thought about giving up, there was absolutely nothing else I could do, and so I was forced to stay and make it work. So sometimes having a backup plan isn't a good idea. Respect. I've found it's really important to respect the artists and the clients you're working for. To me, it's a natural thing. I think that if someone's being successful and they're having hit records, they're obviously doing something right. And if you see the way that they act and you think, oh dear, I wouldn't act like that, or give them the benefit of the doubt, because they've done something which you haven't, that they're successful or more successful than you are. I think it's very important to be respectful. I've also found that I've learnt a lot of these people, and I found I've got friendly with them as well, because I'm straight talking, but being respectful and appreciative of what they're doing. Obviously that makes the clients and the artists feel good as well. Nobody wants to think that, everyone wants to be respected, don't they? So I found that that's stood me in good stead, and I ended up becoming friends with Malcolm and other major artists. It's all part of the job. Anyway, so I hope this has helped you, and remember to give OmniVibe a plug, to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe. It's all really appreciated. Thank you very much.